25 offers to the class of 25 kind of tells me he wants to stay at least relatively young, probably get 4 to 5 dudes in this class and not just be so reliant on that unpredictable transfer portal.
We are back for another edition of the Starting 502 podcast. As always, Presley Meyer with you from the Kern's Korner studio, brought to you as always by Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon. Alongside me, I have Jake Hook, and for the first time ever, we have Roman Kelly. Roman, I'll go to you first, man. If you guys don't know Roman, he's the producer for the Mike Rutherford Show and a lot of happenings, if you will, for Big X Radio as well. Roman, how we doing? Looks like you're experiencing the behind the scenes of Starting 502, which is not really like this. So it's just been
Thank you, Presley, for introducing me. Jake, it's good to see you as well. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. It's good to be a part of this. You guys have welcomed me in well, and I've gotten to, already see how things operate and stuff. But I'm ready to talk basketball. We got an exciting season ahead of us. I hope there should be a very exciting season ahead of us. A lot of big news to talk about, even as of today. Scheduling and all those things. So I'm ready. I'm excited. New
Jake,
guard of U of L basketball is coming in.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Jake, you're not married yet. You're engaged. You're in a new house.
Yes.
It's a little bit. You doing all right, man?
I'm doing well. Yeah, we're trying to cut back on the traveling, but yet every weekend we still seem to be. And Louisville football doesn't help with that because we're trying to get to as many of those as possible. But yet the house is set up. I don't have any holes in my roof, so I guess that's a positive and something to be thankful for that I didn't think about before talking to you. So yeah, everything's going okay.
Yeah, mine was so the reason you're seeing a different angle of me tonight. I essentially walked downstairs last week, and there was just gallons of water coming out of the vent in my ceiling. So apparently, it's a common issue in a new build house. So here we are. I don't know. I have holes in my ceiling until next week. So it is what it is. Regardless, though, as Roman alluded to, kind of a turning over of a new leaf a little bit, and we can officially start talking about what the Louisville basketball season could and will look like because we officially have a schedule. So that's a huge deal. We know what this season is going to look like, how things are going to play out. And, I'll go to you guys for, initial thoughts. But, I mean, we knew a lot of what the non-conference was going to look like. We knew, you're going to play everybody in your conference schedule, right? But we didn't know how they were going to fall. I think if you look at the Louisville football schedule, maybe if you were looking at it in the offseason, it probably feels a lot different than it does now going into week 4, right? Like you didn't maybe have the same thoughts about Boston College or Georgia Tech or, some programs that seem to be a little bit better than we expected. And the same could be said about maybe Kentucky or, there's when you're approaching it like we are now, kind of in a raw sense compared to what we did, with the football season. I see there's a lot of parallels there, but no, we have a full schedule. The thing that stands out to me the most, and Jake, I think you've already mentioned this a little bit, is it's kind of a result of the Kenny Payne era that Louisville they're not on national TV at all this year, which is just really weird and jarring to see, right? There's no CBS games. It's mostly ACC Network.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, we've had some down years, but I mean, the Duke game, the North Carolina game, the Tennessee game, they're all on ACC Network. Like
that's weird.
That's insane to me. I mean, put us on the CW if you're going to be that disrespectful.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Ole Miss is on the ACC Network. That's maybe. I mean, I understand. We'll get into who they're playing, but that's perhaps the most jarring thing about the schedule is. I mean, you look at, if you just look across the board, Tennessee, ACC Network, Ole Miss, ACC Network, Duke, ACC Network, Kentucky, we'll see. It's on a Saturday, but it's during rivalry. It's the biggest rivalry day of the college basketball season. So I don't know if they'll land on CBS, if it'll be ESPN, if it'll be SEC Network. I'm not really sure. But I mean, you play Florida State on the CW, you play at Virginia on the ACC Network, North Carolina on the ACC Network.
That one's weird too. On New Year's Day, you couldn't put that on
New
TV.
Year's Day, yeah, New Year's Day against North Carolina at home. That's gonna be an odd one. Like I'm hoping it's not like a nooner, right? Like if you have a New Year's Day game,
At
that's gonna be
noon.
really weird if you're playing North Carolina at noon on New Year's Day. Now, I will say it feels like it makes for a good home court advantage because I'm not sure how many North Carolina fans are going to travel to Louisville for New Year's Eve. But yeah, I'm interested to see what that looks like. But yeah, I mean, you really don't have any of these like premium games that we're used to. Even last year, Jake, I remember we were looking over the schedule and we talked about there were 11 or 12 kind of, big time games that were on ESPN, on ABC, on CBS. I think they played 3 CBS games last year. So definitely a bit jarring to see. But, I, I get that's the result of what Louisville's done over the last 2.5 years, right? I mean, really, you've witnessed since Chris Mack left, you've witnessed 14 wins, if you want to put it in that context, right? Like that's disgusting.
Yeah.
That should never happen with this program. And so I think other programs are being rewarded. A Wake Forest is probably going to see a lot more ESPN games right now. So what
NC
stood out
State
to you guys? Yeah, NC State, right?
after their run, especially. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some other things that are standing out when you're looking at the schedule?
Well, I'll go first here. The first thing, 8 of our first 11 games are all against NCAA tournament level opponents, pretty much. Which is that's a hefty start to your season. That's literally throwing your team into the fire. Which I'm not mad at it at all. It's noticeable, right? Is that off chance now where you're looking at these games and you're like, well, you couldn't be mad at a 7-4, right? Like a 7-4.
Right.
You don't want to go 7. You don't want to lose your 4 of your first 11 games. But at the same time, with these kind of opponents, if you can win 7 of these first 11 games, ideally 8. When I look at them, I mean, really, I don't want to get too optimistic about our first 11 games of the season, but
11-0. Say it now.
Those are those are a lot of good opponents before Kentucky. No away games before Kentucky as well. Now you've got the Battle of Atlantis, but you've got 4 home games at Yum, and then Battle of Atlantis and 3 home games at Yum, and then you're going to Lexington. And with no one on the roster other than Aiden McCool, who understands what this rivalry really, really is on the court, at least, right? They've gotten to see in the summer with the Ville and stuff, in the TBT tournament, but that's a big away game, and I get Mike was trying to make. I brought that up earlier. I was talking about it on the Mike Rutherford show, and Mike pointed out you can't set a team up for that. You're not going to prepare a team for going down to Rupp Arena in a game like that unless they've already done it. So I get that, but no away game before Kentucky. You don't get a real test on a away court. I thought that was also noticeable. Those are the first 2 things, at least in the first half of the schedule, that I noticed. And I'm like, whoa, okay. That's going to be a test on December 14th at Kentucky.
Yeah,
it was always going to be, but there are other factors now that make you think about it even stronger.
Yeah, I was going to point it out. I wish we just had like one of those games away. I mean, I'm happy to have Tennessee at home. I'm happy to have Ole Miss at home, but maybe if we could have just gone to Ole Miss and just because it's kind of crazy to go your first road experiences in front of 22,000 Blue fans. Like that's going to be tough. But I will say our team's old. Our team has played in a ton of away environments before.
A lot of the guys have been in the tournament. They've been in high pressure games.
Yeah. But yeah, I would have loved just one away game
cool.
against a normal NCAA team.
And I think you're right. Ole Miss right there, December 3rd, kind of would have been the perfect spot for it because you get to come home, play Duke, get that other big test like that before Kentucky. But I can understand it still.
We will be battle tested. That is for sure.
Absolutely. The thing that stands out to me, right? Like I think if you're a Louisville fan, you're circling that Tennessee game right off the bat.
Oh yeah.
You got Tennessee at home on a Saturday at noon. If it's not a sellout, it'll be close, right? Fans are going to fans have already gotten a taste of what this team is going to look like. And then, I mean, we're close, man. We are inside of a month away from playing Young Harris in the KFC Yum Center. And then a week later on a Monday night playing Spalding, which I'm super excited about. If people don't know this, I attended both Spalding and Louisville during my academic career. So, what an opportunity for the boys down off 4th Street. Now, that should not be that should not be a game that's within 70 points.
You want to give us a breakdown of the Spalding roster?
No, I do not. They've had the same head coach since I was in college, and they've consistently been good at one thing, and that's shooting the basketball. But they are not a good program. They haven't been a good program since they went D3, which was 12 years ago, I think. So, no, I mean, that's not a program that's going to challenge Louisville at all. No offense to any guys on the team. I think it's a great opportunity. But no, going into the season though, November 4th, you tip it off against Morehead State, a team that we talked about this. I mean, it's been a month now, Jake, but we talked about that. It's Morehead State's not a team that's going to lay down for you. Like
Not at all.
that's a good start to the season, and a good kind of primer for Tennessee on November 9th. And look, I mean, that's your chance right there to put the country on notice. Even if you don't win that game, if you show up with 20,000 strong, with an opportunity to beat what will likely be a top 25 team at home to kick off the Pat Kelsey era. If you want buy-in, if you want full buy-in from this fan base, and you want to kick off recruiting in a very strong way, you go in there and if you don't win that game, you keep it close, you keep it competitive and respectable, and people realize, okay, this is not the program that it's been for the last 2.5 years, right? It's not a program that's only won 14 games in the last 2.5 years. I think that's a significant opportunity. We're going to get into recruiting here in just a little bit, but my hope is that Louisville is utilizing that Tennessee game as an opportunity for recruiting.
I
Because
don't want to
yeah, go ahead.
I hate to say, I don't like the phrase must win in any unless you're down 3, unless it's an elimination game. Those are the only must win games in sports.
Mm-hmm.
When you've just come off of 8 wins and you know that the country has kind of changed its mindset about what Louisville basketball has been and is, this is a game that you can change a lot. You can gain a lot of fans right back with assuming we beat Morehead State and you're going into this Tennessee game, feeling optimistic, right? You could do a lot for this fandom in this city right now by winning that Tennessee game and showing that you are back to what people think of Louisville basketball when you think of it. I'm not going to call it a must win at all, but I want to this is a very, very, very important game, right? Obviously, losing it and winning, losing the game doesn't change a whole lot for our season yet, at least, right? You can look back and be like, oh, if we would have won that game, of course, but winning this game will do a lot for you. And losing it, depending on how you, like you just said, Press, depending on how you lose this game, you don't want to lose this game in any kind of bad fashion at all. If it's not a game you win comfortably, it has to be a close game the entire game. So I think there's a lot of importance on this Tennessee game and what it means for Louisville fans and how they're going to view Pat Kelsey going forward.
Yeah, I think that Tennessee game is just ginormous, and they're going to be talented. I know they lost Connect. I know they lost a lot of people, but
they got a couple guys in the transfer portal.
Yeah, they still have Zakai Ziegler. They brought in Chaz Lanier from UNF. So they'll still be good. They'll still be well coached. I think you're all right. If we keep this game within 5 and it's competitive the whole entire time, there will be buy-in. There will be real belief that, okay, this is something. A win would be amazing, but this would be something. And then 1-2 wins in the battle for Atlantis, and we have fan buy-in right there immediately. You have a real product as opposed to what we've seen for the last 2 years.
You're feeling comfortable about filling up that Yum Center too.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And look, Pat Kelsey went out and did a fantastic job of scheduling in a way that it's going to create and build and nourish a narrative around this program if they continue to win, right? So, you start out the season, Morehead State, a local team. After the Tennessee game, they have 10 days off, and then they host Bellarmine. And then that Friday, so 3 days later, after the Bellarmine game, they host Winthrop, which, of course, is where Kelsey coached for, I believe, 10 seasons, 12 seasons, something like that. He
Yeah.
was there for a long time. And then right after that weekend, they're going to head down to the Bahamas. They got Indiana on the docket that coming Wednesday. Then they'll play either the winner or loser of West Virginia and Gonzaga. And then if you're looking at the bracket from there, you're going to get a really, a pristine opportunity, if you will, to play somebody like an Arizona, like a Providence, it's going to be, well, it will be one of Arizona, Providence, Dayton, or Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, yeah.
So it's set up to where you could play IU, Gonzaga, in Arizona in a 3-day stretch. I mean, that's huge.
That's
Think
huge.
about the
It's huge.
opportunity presented. All those games will be on ESPN or ESPN2. It's going to be if you're familiar with how this is set up, it's on Thanksgiving weekend, so all eyes are going to be on these games. People that are settling in as college basketball fans, you have an opportunity in the first 3 weeks to completely flip the narrative of what this program is.
I
If you
also
come
think
out,
you get. Sorry.
I was just going to say, if you come out of the Bahamas, 5-1, that's huge. That's
Yeah,
massive. You're ranked team.
definitely. I also think seeing Morehead State, Tennessee, Indiana, potentially a Gonzaga or Arizona, and then Ole Miss and Duke all before Kentucky, but also just seeing all those teams early on in the season when you have this much experience, you have these older guys who, you don't have to worry about them in the beginning of the season and figuring things out, right? You kind of hope that you were able to get them all on the same page earlier on than you normally would with a team, which based on what we saw in the Bahamas, what they did. They were all on the same page. Pat Kelsey had already done a great job of getting everybody to what, I don't like the phrase, but buy into what he is trying to get them to do. That's huge for an experienced group who has aspirations for the end of the year. People are going to say this is a big test or, too big of a test. I think it's a learning opportunity. It's a lot of film for them to have going into a lot of big games after that. So, yeah, I think it's you guys are right on it. It's going to be a valuable time frame in our season for us to get people back on the Louisville train.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I love it. I don't think you could have prepared the team any better for Kentucky. Obviously, we talked about it, maybe one road game,
Yeah.
but I mean, based on our schedule that we had a few years, the last couple of years, besides like the one tournament that we'd have on Thanksgiving around there, you really wouldn't have much competition. Then you just jump into UK and you're like, this is a complete like 360 in the difference of competition that we're playing right now. So I mean, they will be as well prepared as they could possibly be for that game, which is probably the biggest non-con game, maybe that or Tennessee.
Yep.
Right. So you're before the Kentucky game, right? You're looking at a bare minimum of 3 ranked games, with a maximum probably of 7. No, excuse me, 6 ranked teams that you play, right? So
Yeah.
Tennessee is going to be a top 25 squad. Ole Miss is probably going to be top 25, and Duke is going to be a preseason top 5 team. You play all of those teams before you get to Kentucky, so they will absolutely be battle tested. And even if those aren't quote unquote ranked teams, they're going to be quasi ranked foes that will probably be, they'll probably ultimately be NCAA tournament type of teams by the end of the season. So you look at Tennessee, you look at Indiana, Ole Miss, Gonzaga, maybe in Arizona, maybe a Providence, Ole Miss. I already said Ole Miss. Excuse me, Duke. So all those teams, right, are going to be, if they're not in the tournament, they're going to be close. So that is a hell of a challenge if you think about it, in your first 7 to 8 games of the season. So I'm excited to see what that could look like. And then as we're rolling, we don't want to spend too much time just on the front portion of the schedule, but after Kentucky, you travel to Florida State the next Saturday. And then on New Year's Day, as we mentioned, you host North Carolina. 3 days after that North Carolina game, you're at Virginia. Then you play Clemson, Pitt, and Syracuse, and then host Virginia at home. And that's the bulk of the really strong opponents on your schedule, right? Like
Yeah.
there's other good good opponents, down the line, like quality opponents. But I mean, the meat of your schedule is early on. I mean, from the first hit, November 4th, until midway through January, it is just nonstop. It's relentless.
And then right after that, the
go
bulk of
ahead.
our away games start
Yeah,
right after that.
yeah.
So
So you go, I think 45 days playing only 3 home games. So although the quality of the opponents, which again in college sports you never really know, especially in modern day,
especially in
shit,
the
Wake Forest could
ACC.
come out. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
the
Wake Forest could
mid
come out and
level
be
of the
amazing.
ACC. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Pitt could come out and be awesome. You really don't know. But ultimately, that. I mean, if we look at the schedule, we know Kentucky is going to be good quality. We know that North Carolina and Duke are going to be very good. We know that Virginia is going to be solid. So you can look at the schedule and see the teams that are going to be quality opponents. And then it's kind of a toss up from there, right? I mean, like, you finish out the season. Your last 10-ish games are Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, Boston College, Miami, NC State, Notre Dame, Florida State, Virginia Tech, and then a 3-game homestand of Pitt, California, and Stanford. So not what we became accustomed to in the Rick Pitino and Chris Mack eras, where everything would be backloaded, and you finish the season with like UNC, Duke, and Virginia, and like 3 of your last 4 games, right?
Yeah.
So definitely a lot different than what we were used to, but that could be beneficial, right?
Yeah, I
For
mean,
the
Cal
quality.
shouldn't be terrible, right? Like,
Oh, sure. They're right. Cal could absolutely be a bubble team this year. I think that's really kind of where they're sitting.
so I'm
The
not mad at
quality
those last
backcourt.
3.
Yeah, yeah.
If you could have moved like an NC State down there, though, that would have been. You don't want to
Mm.
end the season not knowing, where your team truly stands. You want to have one last test before ACC tournament play starts up for sure. But I'm not mad at it. Cal be, Pitt and Cal, then Stanford to end the season off. Not terribly mad at it at all.
Yeah.
But
And this, well, I was going to say too, this is the type of schedule, right, where you could lose 10 to 12 games and absolutely be solidly in the tournament.
yeah, for
Like
sure.
this
Well,
is a good schedule.
you could be, yeah. I don't know how solidly, depending on
It
who,
depends on who the wins are, right?
yeah, who
Like
the
the
wins are
losses
exactly. But
to West Virginia,
you also know you're gonna have some good
Oregon,
wins in
and
there for sure
yeah,
too.
you gotta have some good some quality wins mixed in there, but you have every opportunity, right? Like if you look at the schedule, and you see Louisville lost 8 to 10 games, I think that's a pretty realistic number. Like I mean you know I
I got 22-9. I went through it today and did my wins and losses. I finished at 22-9. I don't think that's
Jake.
crazy either when I look at
No,
this.
no, not at all. Not at all. Jake, what kind of thoughts do you have about how front loaded the schedule is, and what the expectations could look like?
I love it. I love it a lot. I think it gives us a great opportunity to have some positive momentum going into it. Because I mean, really, based on what we've had the last 2 years, if we win out of Tennessee, Indiana, assumedly Gonzaga, maybe Arizona, Ole Miss, Duke, and Kentucky, like if we win 3 or 4 of those, I mean, 1, we're already halfway to our win total from last year, and 2, we've just beat 4 to 5 high
Tournament
quality
teams.
opponents. And like,
Yeah.
I love that he did it, because I would have hated for us to just whoop up on Spaldings and whoop up on UTEPs and things like that all preseason and not have any idea and still not have full buy-in from the fan base. But you beat Tennessee at home, you beat Duke at home, immediately right there, you've been recognized that you're a team to compete with for the whole entire
Yeah.
season. So I love it. I
And you're
wish
probably getting viewed as a tournament team too.
yeah. I wish the back 5, maybe like you said, had like an NC State or North Carolina right there, but I won't complain about that at all.
Cal will be a good test.
Yeah.
It will be, yeah. I mean, I think Jacob and I probably 2 or 3 months ago were just talking about what the schedule could look like, and I kind of wrote off Cal, and he was like, "No, dude, like they might be a top half of the conference type of team." So Jacob's definitely a guy who is tuned in obsessively to college basketball. So,
Yeah.
I definitely believe, after kind of seeing what the roster construction looks like, they could be solid, and they're out to prove something too, right?
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
Cal, Stanford, SMU, just like in football, they're out to show that they
That they
belong
belong. Yep, exactly.
in a conference like this. obviously everything football moves the needle. Everything moves because of football right now. And that's the way it'll be for the foreseeable future. However, when you join the ACC, you know that you have to have a above average college basketball team to even compete in this conference. So it'll be interesting to see how they get acclimated. It looks like in on the basketball side of things, they're definitely trying to facilitate road trips for these teams. So a Cal might come out to the East and have a 5-game road trip where they hit Duke, Carolina, Pitt, Syracuse, and Louisville, and just you know do classes on the road for 2 weeks. Like that's going to be the new norm in college realignment. I mean, shit, we're looking at
Can you imagine?
it's
Like as a Cal fan following that?
yeah. I mean, that's could be the new reality, right? Like, what if I mean, this is a total rabbit hole we could go down, but I mean, what if these conferences implode and Louisville's in the Pac-12 in 10 years? Like,
And yeah, we're the traveling fans now
yeah,
across the country.
we're gonna be watching college basketball games that start at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just going to be just a different world. I mean, look at Miami has a 10:30 kick this week.
Yeah.
That's just insane to me. Still tough to process. Any final thoughts on the schedule? We're going to get into this a lot more as we move closer to the season. Start seeing and kind of analyzing how this team is going to stack up against this schedule. But any other thoughts? Anything else that's standing out to you guys right now?
Just February, how you
Yeah.
go, you start February 1st, Georgia Tech, Boston College, and you come home to Miami, one game. Then you go right back at NC State, at Notre Dame. Those are going to be, not simple
Quality
games.
opponents.
They're quality opponents there. Then you get Florida State at home, and you go back to Virginia Tech. And that's a February, we're moving a lot, right? There's 2 home games. So February, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we lose one of those games just from the fact that we're on the road, and you might have a game where the 3 ball isn't falling how you want, and maybe one, Chucky gets into foul trouble, and all of a sudden things aren't working out how you want them to. That I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens in February, which is just, I would have liked to have one more home game in February, I think. And like you said, you could have put Ole Miss away and then move one of these games down here at home, right? In February, 2 home games in out of what, 6 is kind of
And it's still wild to me too how they facilitate conference play in college basketball. Like, there's no break,
no.
and that has always kind of befuddled me a little bit. Like, if they're going to start introducing a Duke on in the first week of December into the schedule, why why can't Louisville play Ivy, California Tech on February 17th? Like, like they do in football, right? Like,
Exactly.
why can't there be a breather, a get right game? That's college basketball though, dude. I mean, like, that's kind of what we're looking at. And it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how, just like in football, how we're viewing that stretch, right? Of going to North Carolina State and then going to Notre Dame in February versus how we view it now. If you look at, I mean, Notre Dame, I love what Micah Shrewsbury is doing there. As we came on tonight, he just landed a top 10 kid in the 2025 class. So,
I
like,
saw that. Yep.
he's got some good stuff going on there at Notre Dame. NC State obviously just went on a crazy run, won the ACC tournament, almost lost to Louisville in the ACC tournament, and then went on a crazy run and went to the Final Four
Make the
last
Final
year.
Four, and then they revamped in the transfer portal.
Right, and we're going to be facing Brandon Huntley Hatfield and Mike James. Like, what a world we're living in. This is just it's still in college basketball. It may be more jarring to me than it is in football. Like, in football, the coverage is so heavy, and it's such a cultural phenomenon right now in college football that it feels like the new norm already. But in college basketball, it still feels like there's a bit of an adjustment period. The way that teams look, the way that the schedules are falling, that sort of thing. So yeah, I agree with you, Roman. We could be looking at at a situation where Louisville has 7 losses going into February, and we're analyzing, how do we get home with no more than 3 more losses?
Yeah, with less than 10 or less. Yeah, that
Right.
and
Right. And I think that's what it's going to look like, to be honest. I think
Like-
that non-conference schedule is tough, and then it's going to be all about, how does the tournament committee view Louisville's non-conference schedule, and then you get into all of that. So that'll be exciting. That'll be a fun topic for down the road. We want to get into another segment though. Before we do, though, as always, we're sitting here, we're drinking some Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon.
Mr. and Mrs. is for everyone, from a more traditional 90 proof to a cash drink that's smoother. In 2013, Russ going to the hole, and boy, could we use that right now. Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon covers tastes, all different taste of preferences, 6 different bourbons that they're offering. Be among the first to try Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon, the official bourbon of the state of Louisville, and the Starting 502 podcast on shelves anywhere you find your liquor, and now online at mrandmrsbourbon.com.
All right, guys, we're back, and we are wanting to talk a little bit about recruiting. That's something we really haven't gotten into at all, right, Jake? Because there's just been so much going on, specifically in the transfer portal. The way things were shaking up when Pat Kelsey first arrived, but there's a lot of seniors on this year's Louisville roster, and there's going to be a lot of spots to fill. And as of right now, there's nothing in the way of signees or commitments or anything like that in the 2025 class. So, we want to kind of dive in, kind of quickly. It's pretty timely because right now, as we speak, Michael Brown, a top 10 player in the class of 2025, is on campus at Louisville for an unofficial visit.
Yeah, that's huge too.
Huge. So as we're diving in, I mean, that's what I want to start with, right? Michael Brown, a guy with a 45, 40, 91 split, number 1 point guard in the class. Very quickly, just going over, what his recruitment has looked like in order. These are the teams that have offered him: Baylor, Florida, Auburn, Texas, Kansas, Texas Tech, Seton Hall, Maryland. Florida re-offered him when they got a new coach. K-State, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Michigan, Ole Miss, FSU, South Carolina, Georgia Tech, Kentucky, Louisville. So Louisville pretty late to the process, but understandably with the new coach. And then Arizona and Providence offered him most recently. So that is what his recruitment looked like. A who's who of college basketball powerhouses. He's already taken 2 visits to Alabama, including an official visit to Alabama. He took an OV to Ole Miss, Central Florida, and Indiana already. His visit currently is an unofficial. I'm assuming the staff is trying to convince him to come back and take an official visit during the season. And he will go straight from Louisville to Kentucky for an official visit on the 27th of September. In October, the last week of October, he will be at Maryland. And then the second to last week of November, he will be at Arizona. So Kentucky is a team that's pushing hard for this guy. They've already been in twice to see him in person in Orlando just this month. So Kentucky's a team that's pushing hard, but it seems like Louisville's is pushing just as hard as well. What are y'all's thoughts about Michael Brown, a guy who, I mean, to me would be a program changer?
Yeah, I mean, top 10 in the class would be huge. Great point guard. I know Travis Branham said a few months ago he considered, I think it was us, Kentucky, a couple other teams, as us, Kentucky, and Alabama as like the 3 top contenders. That was a few months ago, and we know that recruiting can literally change in days. When we feel great about a guy, and then literally the next day you hear news, you're like, nope, he's not even consider us anymore. But I feel great about it, and I honestly think with him and with all these recruits, once the season starts, they see the way we play, they see how fast-paced it is, they see us being successful, the recruiting will just become even easier.
Yeah, definitely. I think, is it Michael? I thought it was Mikel. Is it Mikel Brown?
Yeah, I've been saying Michael, but yeah, I think it's probably Mikel.
Mikel Brown.
Yeah.
Highly touted kid. He can do it all in the point guard position. He can defend too. The fact that he's here like now is huge for us, right? Getting him here is all it takes, I think, to truly kind of show him what it would mean to be here, right? If there's nothing you can go take him to at the moment, then that's one thing. But the fact that he's here, I'm confident that they can do enough to get him back on an official.
Yeah, and for people who, don't follow recruiting very closely, I don't blame you.
It's hard to follow.
But it's hard to follow. There's so many players. There's so many things that are changing and constantly evolving in college athletics right now. Uh, but for
You can
those who
never
aren't
know,
following,
really.
there's not a limit anymore on where you can take an official visit to. So when you hear the name of 5 schools that he's already taken no V to, he can take 10 more official visits if he wants to, which is great. But it sounds like they're kind of cracking down on the way that they treat these official visits, right? Like if it's an OV, that's your chance to treat it like, to kind of really go all in. And there's a lot of different rules for OVs. For unofficial visits, they want to make sure that it's, paid for by the recruit. It's a trip that's not necessarily, it's not where Louisville's putting their best foot forward. They're just trying to establish this relationship.
Yeah.
It sounds like this visit though is kind of on UK's dime because he came up from Orlando to make a visit to Louisville first, and then just drive down the road to Lexington.
They paid for the flight
So
up here.
yeah, I'm
Not mad at that at
assuming.
all.
I'm assuming that that's how it worked, is that they paid for the flight up. So that could be kind of a good feather in Pat Kelsey's cap. But yeah, I think this is a guy that you'll see back. I would love to try to get him back, as we mentioned earlier, for the Tennessee game. But this is a guy that I'm hoping that the staff is trying to hone in on.
Definitely. He should be a priority to try to gain his interest.
So the other guy that a lot of fans have been hearing about is Shelton Henderson. They're saying, one of the quickest rising small forwards in this class. He already took his official visit to Louisville on August 23rd, had a lot of great things to say about it. His only other official visit so far has been a Texas Tech. And one thing to keep in mind about Shelton Henderson, this is, just kind of as I've been just reading about some of these recruitments, it sounds like it's not 100%, but he could potentially be a package deal with a guy named Nate Ament. I'm not sure what the connection is there. Nate is from Virginia. Shelton Henderson plays essentially in Houston. He's from Bel Air, Texas, which is like a middle town of Houston. Could be a package deal with Henderson and Ament. And the only offers that they have in common are Louisville, Duke, and Texas. Now, Shelton Henderson already took his OV to Louisville, and he will be taking an official visit to Duke on the 27th of this month, so this coming Friday. And then he'll be taking an official visit to Texas. It says the 27th on a couple of recruiting websites. I'm assuming he's going to take a visit to Texas right after. So, what do you all think about the concept of having a package deal? Like, but Ament is the number 4 player in this class. So it's not like it's a guy that's unrated or something like that. This is a huge prospect. Any thoughts about that?
I don't understand a whole lot about where the package deal would come from. Doesn't really add up to me a whole lot there. I'm assuming they're friends somehow, some way. But yeah, these are two 2025 guys that would both be huge major pluses to us. Shelton's a 4-star, I believe. He top 15 in his class. He can play multiple positions, 3, 4. He's 6'6", 210. He can shoot. These are both just kids that you would love to have. I don't understand how the package deal comes about, though, with one being from Texas and one being, I'm looking here, that looks like one was born in Texas and the other was born in Virginia. I don't know where the correlation comes from, though. I'll have to do some research on that.
It's just a quick 18-hour drive to go see your best friend.
What are you like? You're not travel team buddies, right? Like,
yeah, I guess those AAU circuits, you can get connected with anybody if you're a top talent. So
true.
I guess, I don't know, maybe like an NIL agent that's trying to package them together, make them more money. It's an odd connection there. But yeah, I watched a little bit of Shelton Henderson. I watched him in like the team, I think it was the U17, U18 games that he played in for Team America. Very like, I don't want to say unrefined, but like very much hustle, like athleticism is what he relies on, at least from what I saw in the couple games. But has like the intangibles that you want in a 5-star, like in a guy that if he hones his craft can be a top 15 NBA pick.
Definitely.
Yeah, We kind of passed over this. Jake, you're normally pretty good about this. Do you have any thoughts about Michael Brown's game, how he fits at Louisville?
I have not gotten to, unfortunately, I have not gotten to watch him a ton. I know he's more of a true point guard from what I've seen. I mean, can't score obviously, but like just a great guy to have on the team to lead us. So I'd be excited for him. But no, I haven't gotten to watch him. Like you all said with the basketball recruiting, it's just so hard to like if we get a guy on an official visit like we have now, I'll start to like consider him more seriously. But like you've got dudes that say they're visiting October 12th, and then October 11th comes around, and you see on a message board, heard he's canceling his visit, and then he cancels it. So it's like it's very hard to take these guys too seriously.
Yeah.
It's been kind of a nice change of pace. I know a lot of fans are getting antsy about Louisville not landing any recruits in this class so far, but from what you can see, this is a really slow moving class. Like this is not a class where guys are committing right off the bat. And I think it's a direct result of what's happening with NIL and the transfer portal, right? Like kids don't want to be all in on a program until they know that they're going to have a solid role within that program. But Jake, you made a great point here that Louisville's offered 25 prospects in this class already. Most of them being, a top 150 guy, right? Yeah. So they're going after a lot of different players, trying to, kind of see what sticks and who fits. And I love that. I love the energy of the staff. I love the fact that they're just trying to figure out who fits, to figure out when they get them on campus, who are going to be the players that that are going to gel with this program, with the staff, with other potential teammates. So, a lot of good things on the recruiting trail. But yeah, I mean, it will be nice once we actually get a player to actually commit, and then will that guy be a building block, right? Like, can you get a top 25 guy, and is that a guy that you can build upon?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, just kind of seeing because obviously this first year PK was so limited, he kind of had to go to the transfer portal. There weren't a ton of young. I mean, Kenai Ruths was a great grab, but there weren't a ton of available prospects so late into his hire. And so I was interested to see if he was going to Jeff Brom it and just say, "Hey, we're pretty transfer portal heavy. We're going to leave probably 8 spots open every year for transfers and just recruit 2 to 3 dudes," or if he was going to try and get young pretty quickly. And I mean, 25 offers to the class of 25 kind of tells me he wants to stay at least relatively young, probably get 4 to 5 dudes in this class and not just be so reliant on that unpredictable transfer portal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it too could be a result of, I mean, look, when you're coming from College of Charleston, you don't have the same relationships with these players that you do as the coach of Louisville, right? Like you have, infinitely more NIL opportunities, number one. And number two, you have the ability to land these top name players, right? Like you have, some of the best facilities. You play in one of the best conferences. You have one of the more historically prominent programs. So, yeah, a lot of solid opportunities in this class to really start to make a name for himself as a recruiter.
Yeah, I think the last couple of guys I wanted to touch on, Davion Hannah, Trey Singleton, a little bit on the more negative side. Sounds like I think we all thought we were in pretty good shape for Trey Singleton, essentially a local kid from Jeff, has a top 6, announced he's going to make a decision in a week or two, and then news came out this week that Louisville's just went from front runner to not even being considered.
Do we lose him?
Yeah, I don't know. His screen went black, and then he came back. He gave a thumbs up. I could hear him, and then he just cut out. So I don't know there.
We might have lost our boy Romy, but that's all right. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know what the situation is with Trey Singleton. I'm not sure what the situation is with a couple of these local guys that it seemed like Louisville was in on really strong, and then all of a sudden they just kind of, just fell off all of a sudden. My best guess is that, in this NIL era, I think there's a lot of freshmen that come in expecting a lot of promises to make a lot of money. And there's a couple things to keep in mind about NIL. Number one, as a transfer, you can make you can actually sign a contract with a player as a transfer that you're going to pay them X amount over a certain period of time, or you're going to sign a certain NIL deal over a certain period of time. For a freshman coming in, there's a waiting period. Like they have to be on campus and enrolled in classes before they can start making money. And so it's a completely different recruitment, right? Because if say you're looking at the recruitment of Sheldon Henderson, right, a guy that's been courted by coaches since probably eighth grade or freshman year of high school, right? And then he is just constantly making relationships, constantly going to these camps, constantly, being on
Meeting
the
coaches. Yep.
right. And the reality is, you have 6 weeks to 2 months roughly to recruit players out of the transfer portal, and out of high school you're developing a relationship. And so it's so different in the juxtaposition between the way that these recruitments are happening. I mean, you have players committing sight unseen. I mean, there's players on this Louisville roster right now that never visited campus, they just showed up. And that's an important distinction to make, right? Like, as a high schooler, you also have a lot of parent involvement. These are kids. They could be 15, 16 years old flying across the country to meet with the coach that's telling them they're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And so I say all of this to get to the point of the fact that a lot of these local players, they're probably asking for a lot more money than what's realistic. And I think that Pat Kelsey is just like Jeff Brum and just like Jeff Walls and most coaches at U of L. I think they all have kind of a similar philosophy in that, if they're going to spend, they're going to spend on transfers.
Yeah.
They're not going to spend heavy money on an incoming freshman
Who's
when
can?
number one, unless it's a multi-year deal, right? Like
Yeah.
unless you're
You could
spending
turn around next year and I
right.
didn't start. I don't want to be here.
Exactly. And on a team like this, for instance, you really have to be just a really special player to make your way into a rotation like at a place like Louisville.
Yeah.
And so it's such a difficult, I think that's the reason you offered 25 top 150 guys in this class, right? Because you want to bring in as many guys as possible and figure out who is there for the right reasons. I know that sounds like the Bachelor in Paradise, but who's there for the reasons that you need them to be there. I think Louisville, had executed that perfectly with the one freshman that's coming in this season. But I think that's the way that things are going to look going forward. To be honest with you guys,
this is Pat Kelsey's first year dealing with recruits of this caliber, right? So he's never been in a program this big, so it's a different ball game. He is going to have to learn his process about what works and what doesn't. He's going to have to figure out what he has to look for in a player to where you can go ensure you keep finding the Kenai Ruths of the world, right? Because some of these kids are going to be Jaden Quaintonses of the world, where the money and the playing time are all they're listening to. They don't care about anything else. They don't care about getting their skills toned and built up and things of that nature, and what the program stands for and how they want to operate, right? You have to go out and try to find those kids. And the kids in these top 100 type of players, they know what kind of money is out there for their names now. So it's a balance you have to go try to find. It's weird. It's different.
It's more of an adjustment to me in basketball than football, because players are expecting to play right away in basketball, whereas in football you could get a Pierce Clarkson or somebody like that who they're gonna be like, "We'll wait it out. We know it might be 3 to 4 years before he plays, but we understand the upside is here, and that's the reason why we decided to come here." So.
Yeah. Press, I want to ask you one thing. I know we don't have a whole lot of time left.
Mm.
Did Trey Singleton news from today or yesterday or both? Do we have any idea about why? I mean, I thought we had an unofficial visit. I thought he came on an official visit after that, and we pretty much felt comfortable with moving forward with Trey. I don't understand why you wake up and get on Twitter today, like Jake was saying earlier, and now all of a sudden things are different.
Right. That was kind of what I was alluding to a little bit, was it's got to be something related to money, playing time, opportunities as a whole. I think a lot of these local kids, especially, they have an understanding of what this program is, but they have expectations for either immediate playing time or value themselves more than what the program does.
Yeah, and that's
Look,
fair.
I think if you're an intelligent recruiter in this day and age, monetarily, you're going to value a transfer with experience at any level higher than you do a freshman. That's just kind of my thoughts, unless it's a Zion Williamson,
Yeah,
unless
Cooper
it's
Flag. Yeah,
right. Like maybe like if you're looking at a Michael Brown, the recruitment's different. Like I know they really placed an emphasis this week on making sure he felt super welcomed and that this is a recruitment that they have a legitimate shot at. But no, I think that's got to be what it is for Trey Singleton. Like he doesn't strike me as a guy that's just going to make a sudden change of heart, especially
yeah.
as a local player.
I
So
think.
yeah, go
I mean,
ahead.
I don't have any facts. I haven't spoken to anybody close to the situation at all. But I would assume that Pat Kelsey probably told him, "Look, you're not going to come in and get this kind of playing time. You know what I mean? It's going to be a 2-year one. You pay your dues in the first year, you learn our system, and in the second year we kind of right. And a lot of these kids are like, well, this school is offering me the same amount of money and a starting spot, and if you're not thinking about March at all, you're going to go take the starting spot in the same amount of money. And I can understand that, and that's the weirdest part about this whole changes with the basketball transfer and the NIL money and the freshmen.
Right. Any thoughts, Shake?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards price of the bag. I don't know. Northwestern came in late. Purdue came in late. I think he's visiting those two here soon. I want to say like in the next couple of days. Maybe just the price of the bag just went up. That would make a lot of sense to me because I mean, if you're 18 years old and someone says I'll pay you $250,000 to come, even if it's at Northwestern, I'd still probably do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I can understand it. You're not an NBA product after 1 year of college anyway. So
yeah.
As we're closing out here, I would close with this, right? Pat Kelsey came in his first day. He had a meeting with the existing team from the Kenny Payne era. A lot's been said about what went on in that initial meeting. But the number one thing that stood out to me was there was a player there that the staff really wanted to keep, and he couldn't even make eye contact with the coaches. He couldn't even focus on, this is your first time meeting somebody. This is your future on the line. You have no idea what's going on. You don't know what's going to happen with this program. You don't know what's going to happen with this coaching
be a
staff.
man, shake his hand.
Exactly. And that didn't happen. And, we won't say any names or anything like that, but that's.
It was Aiden McCool.
Yeah, it was Aiden McCool, obviously. But that's the way that the coaching staff values and views players. They view them as humans. And they need to have a legitimate relationship. And I'm not saying that's what happened with Trey Singleton. We don't know, and maybe we'll never know. But that's an important thing to keep in mind. That's why you offer 25 guys, and that's why you approach things the way that they're approaching them.
Yeah.
We are up against it. We're running out of time. Romy, I appreciate you hopping on.
Of course.
There's a lot more exciting things in the work in the future. Until next time, Starting 502 podcast. Let's get out of here. Go Cards.
Go Cards.